Chapter 2. Modern civilization has brought about the destruction of mineral balance. Neither water nor air is free nowadays. We Japanese for a long time took it for granted that water and air were free. Until the 1950s, before the heightened economic growth policy plunged us into the bubble economy years, many of us drank water directly from rivers and ate vegetables directly from the fields. That was an age when devices such as air purifiers were completely alien to us. How about today? The air is polluted by innumerable nitrates, water by all kinds of chemicals, and the soil has been destroyed by agricultural chemical sprays. Vegetables, most obviously, have ceased to be free, but so too have air and water. We are breathing contaminated air and eating crops grown in unsafe soil. Furthermore, we are eating the meat of livestock raised on feed grown in the same unsafe soil. On top of all this, we are made to drink water that has lost its mineral balance. Can we really be expected to stay healthy under such circumstances? We have reached the point where we are living in rooms with air purifiers, constantly worried about the food we eat. We drink expensive bottled water. We are keen to ascertain the source of our vegetables and rice while we fret over the level of farming chemical residues. Thanks to the use of fertilizers, we can now produce huge quantities of cabbages very cheaply. Yet these are just substitutes for the real thing and cannot be called vegetables in their own right. They may well have become foods completely lacking nutrients and minerals. Moreover, they very likely contain plenty of harmful chemical residues. I could go on about the dangers, but for now I think I should stop scaring the readers. Note 1. By standard particulate matters mentioned previously, we mean particulates floating in the air that should measure less than 10 micrometers. Note 2. Photochemical oxidant includes ozone, peroxyacetyl nitrate, and other oxidized substances, except nitrogen dioxide. The 5 major food groups are carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals. We have traditionally been able to maintain healthy growth through natural consumption of a good balance among these foods. Because this balance has now been lost, we have been driven to a defensive posturing for health. The case of minerals is an especially wretched situation. Water is not safe. Let's consider tap water. We certainly cannot drink untreated water directly from rivers and lakes that have been contaminated by drains and industrial waste. We have to first remove harmful impurities. Great efforts are laboriously made to remove the trash, man-made chemical substances, and toxic metals such as arsenic, lead, cadmium, chromium, mercury, etc. Biological treatments and the use of chlorine are employed to treat organic matter. Chlorine is added as a disinfectant to kill germs and other microorganisms. One solution has been to try to ensure that no heavy metals are allowed to find their way into water sources, but this is now becoming more and more difficult. Chlorine is commercially produced from the electrolysis of salt solution. Chlorine's properties, heavier than air, easier to combine with other elements, a strong oxidizer, its ability to fade the colors of plant pigments, mean that it is widely used as an oxidant, bleach and disinfectant, etc. The water treated with chlorine is drinkable, yet in the process of treating it with chlorine, it loses part of its mineral content. The mineral balance which gives water its good taste is destroyed, and moreover, the water's cool, refreshing taste, which comes from its oxygen content, is ruined by the smell of chlorine, leaving water either disgusting or tasteless. And here there is a chart entitled Environmental Quality Standards for Conservation of the Living Environment. To view this chart, please refer to the email that came with your book. Minerals are becoming exhausted. Minerals necessary for human physiology, calcium, iron, zinc, cobalt, magnesium, and other such trace elements, are found naturally in soil and water. However, even these minerals, which are present in soil in quantities so great that they may be considered limitless, need to be ionized and dissolved in water in order for plants to be able to absorb them. In contrast, it is easy to absorb minerals contained in microorganisms. We absorb these minerals into our body by eating plants. Alternatively, we consume the livestock, fish, or vegetables which have been raised on such plants. It is essential to note that as the important sources of minerals, soil and water, become contaminated and the mineral-absorbing microorganisms die out, the whole system is thrown out of sync. This is a grave matter. Water flows to the sea by way of households and factories. Along the way, the contaminants such as cooking oil, detergents, bleaches, industrial cleaning fluids, various other additives like pollutants and chemicals are picked up before it is put back into circulation on the earth. It is beyond doubt that vast amounts of contaminants continue to accumulate. In order to remove these contaminants, new products are developed, which in turn create other kinds of environmental damage, and so the cycle continues. Many microorganisms lose their multifunctional ability and end up as anaerobic sludge. Soil is not safe. Soil contaminated by agricultural chemicals has become an acute social issue. The declining number of microorganisms is directly connected to mineral deficiency. The plants, which provide man with the minerals essential for our existence, absorb their nutrients from the soil. Photosynthesis, the process by which plants make use of light energy to combine absorbed carbon dioxide and organic matter from water, cannot occur just because carbon dioxide, water, and the sun's rays are present. The plant's genes also require minerals and trace elements. The protein, the driving force behind the plant's life, is not generated without minerals acting as its catalyst. Plants emit concyan acid from the tips of their hairy roots. Acid in turn breaks down the soil. The minerals contained in the soil are then absorbed and transferred to the leaves. This is what makes photosynthesis possible. If minerals are dissolved in the soil, the plant can easily absorb them. Chlorophyll's principal mineral is magnesium. If magnesium is not sufficiently present in the soil, plants are not able to grow well. In the old days, we used human wastes and compost, which guaranteed a rational cycle of mineral balance. However, since we have become dependent on chemical fertilizers, this balance has been destroyed. Furthermore, because of the use of pesticides, germicides, weed killers, rodent poisons, chemicals to regulate a plant's growth, and various other agricultural chemicals, we have destroyed the bacteria which play a vital role in the cycle of the ecosystem. And here there is a chart entitled Environmental Quality Standards for Water Pollutants and Environmental Quality Standards for Human Health. To view this chart, once again refer to the email that came with your book. Vegetables are no longer vegetables. Using nitrates, phosphates, and potassium, we have been able to produce large amounts of well-shaped plants. However, because this produce lacks nutrients and minerals, they have become just the name with no substance as vegetables. In stores, we can see row upon row of these beautiful, delicious-looking crops, but they are in fact defective goods, lacking in carbohydrates, protein, fat, vitamins, and minerals. The trace elements in particular are present in a very minuscule amount that it is fair to say these produce are defective. If minerals are not present in sufficient numbers, there will be no benefit to your body, immaterial of how many fruits and vegetables you eat. In fact, the more you consume, the higher the risk that you will fall ill because of the chemical residues contained in them. Man has made it a priority to develop agricultural techniques in order to be able to safeguard his supply of food. We have improved species, developed inorganic methods which use nitrates, phosphates, and potassium, and recently we have begun to produce genetically modified foods. We have come to consider that these mass-production modern farming techniques, which were born from a belief that it is necessary to supply in mass, are in our best interests. Yet there was a great pitfall. Consequently, we have made a spread of modern illnesses chronic among people in developed countries. Because scientists around the world fail to realize that the vegetables and grain that we eat, as well as the grain that we feed to our livestock, contains hardly any trace elements, a great tragedy has been allowed to occur. I think it would be no exaggeration to say that in Japan alone, more than 600,000 people die each year as a result of a flawed agricultural policy. In creating our efficient society, we have developed inorganic farming techniques which do not use the genes of the crops themselves, but cause crops to ripen and leaves to thicken. We have committed a great error in mass-producing crops that are deficient of sufficient minerals. The long wait for research results. Results from future investigations will show agriculturists and nutritionists the difference in the amounts of trace minerals present in inorganically produced crops compared to organically produced crops. It is also only a matter of time before conclusions can be drawn regarding the correlation between a vegetable's taste and its mineral content. There is already an established link between a vegetable's taste and the amount of organic matter such as glutamic acid, inosinic acid, the barometer of taste it contains. It won't be long before someone announces that he has discovered the connection between the taste and the mineral content. A chorus of announcements will follow this from researchers who are comparing today's vegetables with those produced years back. There is sure to be a gap in the mineral content of vegetables produced around the time of the Second World War compared to those produced at the beginning of the 21st century. Modern farming techniques omit the use of the genes vegetables needed to reproduce, which has meant that vegetables produced in this way have an extremely low mineral content. Furthermore, the horrible result of inorganic farming methods is that trace elements have almost completely disappeared from modern vegetables. The use of ICPMs and the elemental mass measuring device is flourishing. Already, the Scientific Technology Agency has announced in its 2001 analysis of food constituents, in which it measured iron levels, that carrots and spinach produced in the past contained over 7 times as much iron compared to those which are produced today. The slowness of scientists' reactions to this news is making me gnash my teeth in frustration. Mankind must continue to endure this tragedy until the scientists are ready to accept their mistake. The future of the inorganic farming methods. It is not true to say that just because the trace element and mineral content is low, modern agricultural methods are completely bad. It should be possible to add ionized trace elements to fertilizers. In other words, it is possible to solve the problem and bring inorganic methods closer to organic methods by adding mineral supplements. The Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries will need to introduce measures instructing fertilizer-producing companies to add trace elements to their fertilizers. Trace elements are washed away by rain. This leaves somewhat of a problem concerning how to keep them in the soil. On the other edge of the spectrum from inorganic agricultural methods are vegetables cultivated through organic farming techniques, ideal because their cells contain plenty of trace elements. However, the reality is that less than 0.1% of all vegetables distributed in Japan today are organically cultivated. Consumers who have not been made aware of the importance of minerals avoid buying these expensive organic vegetables, despite their having a superior taste. If it were acknowledged that organic farming methods are the nutritionally correct methods, consumers could use this new knowledge to make a more informed choice about whether to pay a somewhat higher price for their vegetables. However, it seems the efforts being made to enlighten consumers are also insufficient. Organic farming, which recycles the waste from industries such as stock breeding, fisheries, and food companies, as well as making use of weeds and fallen leaves from roadside trees, is a subject which must be grappled with. Vast reductions in medical expenses are no longer simply a dream. In Japan, we have 1,639 health insurance associations, established primarily as cover for employees of large corporations and their families. Yet as medical costs rise and incomes become more and more stretched, over 60% of these associations have found themselves in the red. Because modern-day illnesses are not being cured, a stockpiling phenomenon is taking place in medical institutions as the number of patients continues to increase. What happens when the human body does not receive enough minerals? What happens when we don't consume a good balance of the minerals we need, or when minerals are completely omitted from our diets? You don't have to think for long to find the answers to these questions. There is no shortage of people suffering from diseases such as cancer, atopy, and diabetes. Most of these diseases have been brought on by mineral deficiencies. It's a ridiculous situation. Since the cause of modern-day diseases is from mineral malnutrition, if farming methods were reviewed, with care being taken to ensure that vegetables include sufficient trace elements before they come to the marketplace, it follows that modern-day diseases would naturally disappear. So too with the health insurance group's deficit. If these changes were made, then the individual contributions to national health insurance, which are currently set at 30%, could be greatly reduced. The country is the problem. The nation's attitude, formed by blindly accepting the opinions of scientists who have missed the real cause and focused instead on immunity, is the problem. Allergies are born from mineral deficiencies. Allergies are also diseases caused by mineral deficiencies. I hope that soon it will be realized that the problem lies in farming, and that by revising agricultural techniques, a solution may be found. Among the crowds of Tokyo, I can spot many ladies who wear no makeup. They suffer from atopic dermatitis. Depending on the season, one can also see men and women with a facial mask suffering from hay fever that is going around. These people grudgingly blame their suffering on allergens, airborne mites, antigens in food, pollen, and the like. Their real foes must be pollen and airborne mites. People, pollens and mites are secondary causes. Here again, the real cause is a deficiency of trace minerals. Regardless of how much we try to suppress the symptoms, unless the cause of a disease is correctly identified, a fundamental treatment can never be achieved. It is not a wonder that they don't get cured. I help cure these patients with superminerals, and we will never be free from illnesses unless we consume foods that contain an abundant amount of minerals. Here I may be repeating the same thing, but I need to stress that there is no room for doubt in believing that the cause of modern-day diseases is a deficiency of the gene minerals we call trace minerals. If the body does not receive sufficient minerals, then people with a large amount of cancer genes will develop cancer, and those who have diabetes genes will develop diabetes. Similarly, people with allergy matter will react to mites and pollen and develop atopy, asthma, and hay fever, etc. Are today's medical treatments satisfactory? Procedures to cure illnesses and injuries are called teate in Japanese. Te means hands, and ate means applying. The word teate comes from placing hands on the affected area, yet it appears that nowadays medical institutions use the word not to describe the curing, but the diagnosing of a disease. What's more, a machine carries out the diagnosis. When you go to a hospital, the first thing that happens is that you are examined by a machine, whether it's an X-ray, echo scan, CAT scan, MRI, etc. It is also a machine that gives you the results. A doctor's job is now simply that of reading the results. The larger the hospital, the further you are from having doctors perform the teate jobs, such as taking a patient's pulse, listening to the patient's heart, manipulating a patient's body, or prescribing medicine. No matter how many tests are conducted, even with the name of the disease identified, if the appropriate treatment is not given, the disease will not be cured. In order to cure the disease, we must locate the cause. If you ask the doctor questions like, "Why did I become sick? What caused this disease?" the chances of you getting a satisfactory answer are very small. Modern medicine dictates that if you have high blood pressure, then you are prescribed medicine to lower it. If you have a headache, you are given medicine to suppress the pain. However, another way of looking at this is that pain is the immune system's reaction within the living body. It is the body's work and resistance to disease at work. It may not be enjoyable to tolerate the pain, but it is the body's intrinsic healing reaction at work. If we force ourselves to repress this pain, we will end up exacerbating the situation. Yet a patient with high blood pressure will find that after taking superminerals alongside the prescribed medicine for 3 months, his blood pressure will be stabilized. The patient will then see no reason to take medicine soon. In other words, it is the high blood pressure itself that is going to get cured. The importance of increasing one's own self-healing ability. It is felt that treatment through anti-cancer drugs and radiation gives certain results. In reality, the consequences are that the body's natural immune systems become ruined and patients end up suffering from side effects. Irrespective of the extent to which cancer is repressed, patients are tortured by terribly painful side effects, and consequently the question would be, what was the point of repressing patients' pain if he or she simply drops dead? It has been said that modern treatment is all about slicing off affected areas. However, even if a malignant tumor is cut away and the patient's health is temporarily restored, as long as the cause of the damage is not clearly understood, we are left wondering when there will be a recurrence. From a surgeon's point of view, the success of a complicated operation requiring very high skills is a great achievement. There is a significance that contributes to the advancement of medical science. There have been many cases in which patients' lives were saved and extended, but we may have come to the point where this sort of cutting business of medical treatment might have reached its limitation. We must make our bodies more resistant to disease by supplying them with minerals and allowing our natural powers of defense to work soundly. In the meantime, minerals, under the commercial name of superminerals, can be used to make up the trace mineral deficiency. The extent of mineral deficiency varies between individuals and free us from illness. Medical science should be aiming for a fundamental solution. Diagnostic errors frequently become problems. Remarks are made concerning the fall in the quality of doctors and nurses, but the problem is also linked to the stream of high-tech medical equipments that are being developed so rapidly. New products that keep on coming, doctors and nurses must learn. In spite of this, diseases are not being cured, and the number of patients continues to grow. With no cure, there is no end to the treatment, and so a newer method is suggested. Because scientists do not recognize mineral deficiency as the cause of modern-day diseases, like cancer and cardiac infarction, the same mistakes are repeated again and again without ever leading to a fundamental remedy for the disease. Mankind has kept on repeating the same things that predict a scary ending. Do we mean we do not feel any fear if we all develop cancer together? Is it clear to everyone to see that because there is no cure for these diseases, medical costs continue to climb each passing year? Reducing medical costs should be the country's #1 aim, and the peaceful coexistence between the medical communities and the exorbitant increase of medical cost using patients' lives as their collateral should pose a grave political issue. The Ministry of Health, Welfare, and Labor is trying to gain national support for its policy of reducing the number of hospitals from 9,000 to 6,000 in the name of an improvement in the health system. 40 years ago, when I was a medical student, pediatrics was considered the king of all courses and was very popular. Nowadays, however, it has become a medical specialty, considered unappetizing, unpopular, and unnecessary. It is seen as too labor-intensive and very little to show in terms of a financial reward. As the birth rate has fallen, so too has the number of child patients. Moreover, there are few expensive treatments for children. In comparison, there are much more cushy, appetizing departments, and they are more popular where testing and treating of patients can be repeatedly done for diseases which cannot be cured. These departments, like internal medicine and external medicine, are looked at as having a future in their career. There will come a day when birds sing blues for hospitals. Again, this will be due to rapid disappearance of lifestyle diseases, which will only be brought about through addressing the nutritional imbalance, the mineral deficiency in our diets, by either replenishing trace elements in our bodies or improving agricultural techniques. Not only will there be a surplus of doctors and nurses, but as hospitals become unnecessary, they will inevitably go out of business. The number of medical schools will also face a huge problem. Theoretically, it would be sufficient to keep old numbers of universities and medical schools we used to have during and before World War II. Yet because the majority of citizens would enjoy longer lives, probably over to 100 years old, new social problems, if not involving the medical institutions, would arise as new needs are identified from the collapse of old medical issues. Recently, there has been a tendency for the government to accept amalgamated treatments, a combination of treatments both covered and not covered by health insurance. Only a fraction of the hospitals which offer the most sophisticated treatments allow the use of these amalgamated treatments. The day when all medical institutions allow this is still a long way off. At my clinic, we treat patients with the use of mineral cure, which is not covered by insurance, along with treatment covered by the insurance, without touting as an amalgamated center. In order to reduce the financial burden of my patients, I do conduct telephone diagnoses without a direct physical examination of the patients, while keeping the medical treatment to a minimum. My practice places an emphasis on giving advice and diagnosis toward a perfect recovery as to the suggestion of the dosage of superminerals and the periodic observation of the progress. My patients buy superminerals from a Friends Circle nationwide association. Then instruction on doses and the observations are given from my clinic. Almost all of my patients have shown a progress in their health and are enjoying their daily life. Imagine if everyone had a long life. This may cause some unnecessary anxiety, but before long, as you ponder the lifespan of over 100 years, several necessary cares may come up in your mind. It is likely that in an age where people are healthier and major diseases become a thing of the past, we will be required to work longer years. It is also natural that if we have to work until the age of 75, pressure on the workmanship itself will become lighter. There may also be the problem of how we should spend our extra free time now that we are healthier. I think that how to spend one's pastimes will come to take a more important place in our lives. It is only a matter of time before computer games are aimed not just at children, but also at adults, the elderly, and even very old people of over 80 or 90. I think the leisure industry will make great leaps as healthy people find themselves with too much free time on their hands to know what to do with. I can imagine that as our lifespan becomes longer, more and more people will be attracted to the idea of cosmetic surgery. It looks like there is room after all for those dexterous surgeons to make a living as cosmetic surgeons. This is why hospitals are not safe. A certain surgeon, following an operation, said this to the patient's family: "The operation was a success. It is in the hands of God now." These words are more than enough to put the family in an agitated situation. It is only natural that the family, who trust the doctor and have left everything up in his hands, should naturally feel terrified and unbelievably anxious when they hear that he, in turn, has passed the responsibility over to God. Eventually, this patient was abandoned by God and passed away. After contracting an additional disease while in hospital, this patient had not a prayer. As well as infectious diseases contracted while in hospital, chemical poisoning and medical errors are also included under the name causes of illness. Because hospitals are places where sick people come for treatment, we don't know for sure what germs they bring with them. Since hospitals are a place where people in physically weakened conditions gather, the possibility of becoming infected by another disease is, of course, considerably higher. This is an especially dangerous environment for children and the elderly. The hospital infection that has come under most scrutiny is MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, which is responsible for causing suppuration diseases, pneumonia, food poisoning, septicemia, etc. The weak and the elderly are at a particularly high risk of contracting these diseases. There are many instances of MRSA being contracted through carelessness during treatments involving injections, feeding tubes, catheters, and gauze changing. Infection, however, can be avoided, provided that basic preventative measures, such as the sterilization of equipment, are carried out diligently. A health oversight coming from repeating the same procedure over and over could result in circumstances that are beyond, "oops, I made a mistake." Among these that are scary are the germs which have built up a strong resistance to drugs. The ineffectiveness of antibiotics results in a high temperature and consumes our body. This can lead to the death of patients who would otherwise be expected to fully recover. There is also a danger of mass infection, so it is imperative that care be taken. Problems involving Legionnaire's disease being spread through air conditioning systems and bathtubs, triggering pneumonia, often make the headlines in the media. These kinds of bacteria are found quite commonly. They often make their way into our bodies, but in healthy people who possess sufficiently strong immune systems, they do not cause illness. Why is it only in developed countries? To speak in extreme terms, these new kinds of infectious illnesses belong to a group of diseased civilization. They are a phenomenon not often seen in developing countries. The reason for this is that, although the situation has changed slightly recently, at one time, chemical poisoning, soil damage as a result of agricultural methods, and air pollution were all foreign to lesser developed countries. Through our daily lives, in which we breathe polluted air, eat vegetables grown in contaminated fields, drink water treated by disinfectants, the minerals contained in our bodies have gradually been removed. This means that we have lost our ability to resist germs, and our body's natural healing power has also disappeared. As no alternative exists, we have become dependent on medicine, repeating this vicious cycle and soon weakening our immune system further. However, it is quite easy to avert infection in patients suffering from MRSA by making him or her to drink superminerals while strengthening his body and washing his sinuses. Medicine is not safe. Surely everyone remembers the great social problems that were caused by drugs such as chloroform and thalidomide. Chloroform led to SMON disease, subacute myelooptic neuropathy, a disease with symptoms including sensation disorders, physical disabilities, eyesight problems, and pain. Thalidomide caused the outbreak of physical deformities among babies. Everybody, I am sure, remembers it. It has caused patients incalculable suffering. 63-year-old Mr. A suffers from diabetes. He developed a slight feeling of angina, so every morning after breakfast he took a calcium antagonism prescribed by a cardiologist. 6 months later, he was struck by pain in his joints and a lethargic feeling in his body. He consulted with the doctor who diagnoses diabetes in people. He was told that he may be suffering from collagen disease. Mr. A's wife, who had a little knowledge of medicine, decided to try stopping the antagonism pills designed to expand the blood vessels while always keeping nitro pills with her just in case her husband had an attack. Having done so, in less than a week, both the pain and the feeling of lethargy had left, and her husband made a complete recovery. Because of the doctor's mistaken judgment, he was made to take medicine unnecessarily and almost dangerously, was subjected to the collagen disease. 75-year-old Mrs. B suffers from high blood pressure and went to be examined at her local clinic. For a long time, she continued to take the blood pressure-lowering medicine that her local doctor prescribed. She states that she was also prescribed a number of other medicines. One day, she suddenly became unable to move and was rushed to the hospital. Her legs were swollen and she was unable to stand. So the next day, she was transferred to a public hospital for more detailed tests. Parkinson's disease was suspected, but test results could not confirm this. However, 2 or 3 weeks later, the swelling in her legs had subsided and her strength had returned. Parkinson's disease was ruled out, but without being specific, the doctor said that it may be a new disease. Finally, she was somewhat ambiguously discharged from the hospital. The truth is that it was not Parkinson's disease, nor was it a new disease. In fact, there was nothing the matter with her. The cause was the medicine that she had been prescribed. While she was hospitalized, she was not allowed to take her usual medicine prescribed to her by her previous doctor. After stopping the medicine she had depended on for so many years, her health returned. The medicine which was supposed to cure her prompted a different illness with worse symptoms than the original one. 60-year-old Mr. C was suddenly overcome by pain to such an extent that he was unable to sleep at night. Somebody worried him by mentioning that he may be suffering from cardiac infarction, so he went to a hospital. At the hospital, cardiac infarction was not suspected, and he was passed along to orthopedics. Following an MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, examination, the cause was diagnosed as wear and tear on one of his vertebrae. He spent more than a half a month in traction on painkillers without any improvement and without being able to sleep at night. One of his friends heard about this and, based on his own experience, obtained some pills designed to stabilize his nerves from a pharmacist and gave them to Mr. C. Mr. C occupied an important role, and it was quite conceivable that the cause of his illness was stress from his demanding work. Sure enough, thanks to these pills, Mr. C was able to get a good night's sleep, and his pain, quite curiously and completely, disappeared. Humans consist of both body and mind. The mind can affect one's body positively and negatively, just as the body can influence one's mind. Relying solely on the use of painkillers to subdue pain and antipyretics to lower a high temperature leads to the weakening and destruction of the body's natural self-healing powers. Moreover, the side effects of taking medicines can often result in more serious illnesses. In the case of Mr. C, had he continued to take the anti-inflammatory painkillers, he may have gone on to develop a worse illness. Pain occurs as a reaction to the body's own efforts to repair itself and fight off disease. If we try to stifle this pain unnaturally, we weaken our powers of resistance to illness and can even end up assisting the outbreak of such disease as cancer. A frightening but true story that sounds like a lie. It is not uncommon for a person who has passed away unnoticed by anyone to be later discovered in a mummified state. It may seem like a morbid topic, but according to morticians, the quantity of dry ice needed to store a body in the chapel of rest has decreased in recent times. It seems like it cannot be real, but the truth of the matter is that this is possible because of the amount of food, preservatives, and antibiotics that have accumulated in our bodies. Bodies discovered several days after their death show signs similar to those of dying of starvation. There are many cases of the stomach either containing almost nothing or being completely empty. It is time to seriously look at the situation that has come about in which so many piled-up reserves of chemicals remain in the body after death that it delays the process of decomposition. For instance, the amount of antibiotics used in fish farming is enormous. Pigs, cows, and chickens are no exception. Humans, too, are in this whirl of antibiotic treatments. In the previous cases of patients A, B, and C, they can be considered to have received no benefit from allopathic treatments and, in fact, to have developed chemical poisoning during their treatment process. By treating diseases with superminerals, it will be possible to make causes of illnesses a thing of the past.